How's it going, folks? This video is going to be a bit different from the other videos I've uploaded. I wouldn't call it a review, although it certainly sounds like one. If my channel is anything to go by, it's pretty apparent by now that I'm a big fan of stealth, but more importantly, I'm a Metal Gear Solid fanboy. I've played and loved all the games I could get my hands on in this series. What's more, I've sunk an embarrassing amount of time into Ground Zeroes. Unfortunately, a Metal Gear Solid fan reviewing a Metal Gear Solid game doesn't sound like the best outlet for critical thought, but stay with me here. I mean, I'm not blinded by my passion. In fact, I pride myself on being a miserable, cynical bastard sometimes, and Ground Zeroes, as a purchase, left me incredibly confused as to its actual value. With the phantom pain now looming on the horizon, I figured I'd lay my thoughts out and determine what I liked, what I disliked, and what I hope the phantom pain will be building on. These are my thoughts laid bare for Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. The first thing I want to talk about is, funnily enough, one of the first things we see, the Fox engine and its presentation. There was a lot of buzz around Ground Zeroes' release, with people arguing as to whether or not it was worth its price tag. People were arguing that it was just a glorified demo, that what they got wasn't worth what they paid for, while others argued that there was a wealth of content here, that you could easily spend upwards of 10 hours, which is longer than your average video game campaign, tackling all the missions, trials, and hunting down all the collectibles. So, which camp do I fall in? A little of both, I think. I certainly don't feel ripped off. I only spent £24 on this thing, so nowhere near what current gen games are demanding today. And I've enjoyed every minute. However, what I got was severely lacking. I won't deny that. And I'm sorry, fanboys, but this is a demo. But that's not a dirty word. Let's not forget what demo is short for. This is exactly what we were promised on the run-up to its release. I don't want to weigh in on my thoughts on the implications of this sort of business practice and what it might do for the industry, at least not right now, so I'm going to try and meander back to my original point. Ground Zeroes' aim wasn't just about demonstrating the new gameplay, it was also about demonstrating what the Fox engine is capable of. And let's not mince words, it's capable of some fantastic sights. If photorealism was the aim, I'd say it's a leap in the right direction. PT is even more impressive with its first-person camera. It puts the Fox engine visuals right up in your face, among other things. When the title screen loads up and we get to see Big Boss sitting there, it's pretty impressive. Start up a mission, see the atmospheric effects of the weather and how it affects the characters on screen. You see the heavy rain and how it makes their character's skin and their clothing glisten. You can even see droplets running down their skin. Ground Zeroes, or rather the Fox engine, delivers the promise of next generation visuals. That is, until you start paying attention. Now, I don't want to talk smack about the folks behind the Fox engine. I mean, it's not like I could do any better. But it seems to me like the team behind it are the same team that designed the maps for the previous MGS games, and are used to creating smaller scale maps. And what I mean by that is, during play, everything in your immediate vicinity looks great, while beyond that, it's pretty bare bones. The seams in the charade start to show. There's a lot of pop in here and there, and you'll never find yourself stumbling into the sight of an enemy teleporting into existence, but you'll find it hard to ignore all the inanimate objects that appear as you get close to them. The binoculars or the rifle scopes demonstrate this pretty well, the rifle in particular. Let me show you what I mean. You'll be lining up the perfect shot, only to find that the head you wanted was actually behind an object you didn't see. Now, this doesn't happen often, but what if this problem persists into the phantom pain? What if your infiltration method is snipe first, sneak later? Won't it be annoying to be shooting invisible walls instead of the guards that are standing behind them? This is a small concern to me though. I've also noticed guards' dead or unconscious bodies disappearing when there's a lot of them together. I can understand why this happens, it's probably something to do with keeping the game running smoothly. Bodies quietly vanish whenever they're not needed. It's a neat developmental trick, but it can be easily exploited, and it's detrimental to the whole open world aspect of the game. but I've already said, small concerns, and the invisible walls problem I mentioned only happened to me by accident, and that's because the map is so well designed, which leads me to my next topic. The map, and how well designed it is. Like I said before, I'm fairly certain the team that put together the previous games are responsible for crafting Camp Omega. When I first heard MGS5 was going to be open world, the first thing I thought was, how are they going to keep up the level of detail and ingenuity we've come to expect from their previous titles? It's important to understand that this series has its roots in small enclosed areas and linearity. There were sections that had a lot of thought put into them, and I'm talking about enemy placement as well as the geography. The player would only ever be coming or going in one direction, so building a stealth experience around that is fairly simple. With Ground Zeroes, however, the player can enter and exit various areas in multiple ways, and I was happy to see that that care and attention hadn't gone. It seems, at least to me, every part of Camp Omega has been finely tuned to not only be believable in its appearance and layout, but also designed to be a great stealth playground. I'm not going to kid myself and say something stupid like every area of Camp Omega has its own feel or character, because beyond the slight difference in appearance, there is no difference. What matters is the open world suits the game it's supporting. Case in point, the infamous games, or more specifically, Second Son. This has an open world, nothing on the same scale as GTA in terms of size, but it is designed to be engaging and easy to get around. The first few areas you come across are littered with vents on the side of buildings, which complement your smoke abilities. These vents usually lead to the roof, allowing you to get up high and get a good vantage point, or later, after you've developed your powers, allow you to string together maneuvers to quickly cross the city. The same thought has been put into Ground Zeroes, albeit in a completely different way. The focus isn't on getting around easily, it's quite the opposite. The focus is on making the traversal of this world a nerve-wracking stealth trip. There's only so much cover in some areas. Sections like the helipad, for instance, are simply intimidating by being so open and flat, forcing the player to make some risky moves. In the camp areas, there's clutter placed around that can give your position away, but on the flip side of all that, there's plenty of high spots and vantage points you can use to, check your surroundings or scout out areas. The point I'm trying to make is Camp Omega's design is deliberate. It certainly doesn't seem like it was lazily drag and drop together. The industry likes to use this term, vertical slice, and although that term seems to get a lot of eyes rolling nowadays, Camp Omega fits that to a T. The map has been designed to cater to a lot of playstyles, much like the Phantom Pains map is supposed to do, but on a much grander scale. I suppose by that we shouldn't call Ground Zeroes a demo. Maybe we should call it a vertical slice? A vertical slice we still had to pay for, mind. Good thing this slice has gameplay. So let's talk about the gameplay, shall we? Playing the game. The game is split into missions, a hangover from Peace Walker. Now, I wasn't a fan of the mission structure of that game. If I wanted to sound pretentious, I'd say it fragmented the narrative, something that Metal Gear Canon definitely doesn't need. And while I understand it was to accommodate the portable nature of the game, the constant stopping and starting was just aggravating. For Ground Zeroes, however, a console title, the missions are a lot longer, so the constant stopping and starting between them no longer exists. In fact, the whole cutscene to gameplay ratio has had a complete reversal compared to previous titles. Maybe that's because of the length of the entire package we have here, or maybe it's a sign of things to expect from the Phantom Pain. With its emphasis on freedom, it wouldn't make much sense for a 20-minute cutscene to fire up whenever the player enters a new region. The missions on offer here are surprisingly varied, even though the playground never really changes. The main op of Ground Zeroes gives what every MGS fanboy wants: more story, more Snake, more speculation material. It also makes for a pretty forgiving introduction as to how hard the stealth will be this time around. The weather and time of day works to your advantage, sort of at least. There's certainly downsides like searchlights, but in a straight up comparison with other missions, guards are less likely to hear you or spot you in this mission. The objective is to rescue 2 prisoners and extract them. How that happens though is left entirely up to the player. The rest of the missions unlocked after finishing Ground Zeroes range from an assassination mission to an aerial on rails mission that's pretty forgettable, if I'm being honest. My personal favourite is the Destroy the Anti-Air Emplacement mission. Not only is it an intense stealth situation to be in, where the base is on high alert, so guards run around with no clear pattern or patrol, but to complete the mission, the player must be loud and explosive. It shows that stealth can be an offensive tactic, as well as a defensive or evasive one. The various missions take place during different times of the day, but lack the passage of time, like what we've seen in the trailers for the Phantom Pain. It still serves a purpose though. It gets the player accustomed to the same backdrop, but at different times, tackling different guard layouts. One addition I hope for though is that depending on the time of day, we'll see different layouts for certain cover objects. Having crates packed away or even moved to another area, or having tents rearranged differently, would have made this world feel more lived in, but it would also have stopped players relying on the same objects to hide behind, and the same routes to count on. A departure from the rest of the series is how natural it feels to control. It's damning praise really, but it's true. Every Metal Gear has been so awkward to control. Easy to master, mind you, but still awkward. If it wasn't strange camera angles, it was animations that were rigid, or movement that was clunky and clumsy. Aiming weapons has always been a facet that Metal Gear games have struggled to do. And to be fair, more recent games have improved on this, but Ground Zeroes truly is the best. Aiming doesn't feel as sluggish as it did in MGS4. I do however have a slight bugbear. Aiming while near a cover object will cause Snake to stand up and aim over it, which has led me to being caught plenty of times. Other than that though, movements feel natural. You can move from a run to a duck walk to lying down and back up again sprinting in one fluid sequence. Snake seems to have a bit of trouble with surfaces though. In previous games, pressing up against a wall required some finger gymnastics. First you held down in the direction of the wall to flatten against it, then while that button was still held, you pressed another directional button to move in the way you wanted to travel. It was ridiculous. In MGS4 and Peace Walker, they addressed this by simply adding a context-sensitive button when you were near a wall. Finger gymnasts were out of the job. The cover system of Ground Zeroes is the next logical step from MGS4. Moving into a surface will have Snake automatically press up against it. From there you can pop out of cover, peek around corners, whatever you need to do. It certainly feels more organic compared to waiting for a prompt to appear, but personally I find it feels kind of loose, if that makes any sense. You're by no means stuck to the wall. Walking away from the wall will easily detach Snake, but more often than not I find myself breaking out of cover by moving too fast while in it. I'd reach the end of the cover object and not stop, resulting in my detection. Maybe it's my own fault? Sure. I should have been taking my time, I guess. But this doesn't happen in any other game that adopts a cover system. The item weapon windows of old are gone and replaced with a single inventory interface. At first glance, it seems reductive compared to previous iterations. I found, however, when you get into the swing of things, it's possibly the best inventory this series has ever had. Before, pulling out a weapon or item from the inventory meant you had to cycle through every other weapon or item to get to it. It's a good thing time paused while you were rummaging through your pockets. Not here though. Everything you have on you is available to you in a couple of simple button presses. Time doesn't need to pause. You can only carry so much though. During the missions of Ground Zeroes, you can carry a hip weapon, so a shotgun or assault rifle, a back weapon, a sniper rifle or rocket launcher, and a sidearm, so either a pistol, tranquilizer, or SMG. As well as all that, you can carry 4 types of thrown or explosive weapons, so empty magazines, mines, C4, grenades, and all the like. The variety of equipment seems small at first, but I feel this is one of the strengths of the series. I never quite understood why I needed 10 different assault rifles in MGS4, especially when you were given the best one for free right at the start of the game. Much like the selection of weapons in the first MGS, having an archetype of each weapon is all that's necessary. The majority of the game isn't spent shooting guns though, although it could be. Personally, a lot of my time was spent marking enemies from afar, which is a returning fleshed out feature from Peace Walker. It also makes the binoculars, an item that's appeared in every game of the series, actually worth using for a change. Marking enemies and objects improves your spatial awareness significantly. enemies can be tracked through walls and obstacles as long as you're not moving, similar to how the censoring worked in MGS4. It's satisfying to mark all the enemy's own area and work out that perfect stealthy route through their defences. And even if you get caught, not to worry, the newest feature can make a show-stopping entrance. I'm of course talking about Reflex Mode. Ah yes, the controversial slow-mo ability that everyone lost their minds over when it was first announced. The handy ability that allows Snake to quickly act when he's been seen by an enemy. I can only echo what so many people before me have said though. If it's such a deal breaker, just don't use it. I mean, I get where these purists are coming from, and people have even gone on to prove why Reflex Mode essentially breaks the stealth of the game. But much like the rest of Ground Zeroes, I see this feature as acting like a safety net, or training mode for the Phantom Pain. What's more, the game will actively reward you for not using it, so if you're brave enough to take the training wheels off, then by all means, turn it off. But no, there's no shame in turning it back on when a guard you didn't see spots you, and instantly calls all his mates to come give you a bullet sandwich. Another new feature that isn't getting as much praise as I think it should is the iDroid. Every good open world needs and has a menu system, somewhere the player can check their map, their quests, and whatever else they need to gawp at. And standard procedure for the longest time has been to just have that info available to you at the press of a button. Ground Zeroes takes it one step further. All the menus you need are on the iDroid, and so have a diegetic reason to exist within the game. When we're checking the map, we're not the player checking the map, we're Snake checking the map. It's a nice little detail, but it's ultimately an odd choice to give these menus diegesis. I mean, we are playing a Metal Gear title here. Let's not forget that this is the series where support characters tell you to press certain buttons unironically.
What do you see? Press the call button to get more intel. You can check the controls on the pause screen, or right. If you do that holding the dash button, you'll move faster.
Like the rest of Ground Zeroes, the iDroid's iteration here only seems to be the foundation of what we're to expect in the Phantom Pain. It's still serviceable though. The map displays points of interest and anything that's been marked. It also acts as a sort of journal, where you can stay informed about your current objective, and more often than not, get some extra tidbits of dialogue which makes up for the lack of the codec or radio screen this time around. The iDroid also acts as a cassette player, which is Ground Zero's answer to MGS4's iPod, but it's not just music we're hunting down anymore. There are audio logs to be found too. I won't spoil their content, but I will say it paints certain characters in a different light compared to how we see them at first. I'm looking at you, Chico. Hombre nuevo this, you piece of... This sort of collectible works in games like Bioshock, where you are very much showing up late to the party, and piecing together what the hell happened is half the fun. It's exactly the same with Ground Zeroes. I mean, it's set in a black site like Guantanamo Bay, and places like that are brimming with secrets begging to be discovered. Who wouldn't want to learn more? Audio logs allow the story to be digested at the player's whim. The player can be doing something while the story is played out to them, so the long-winded codec conversations of the past or the uninteractive cutscenes of previous games can be reined in. Finding cassette tapes also incentivizes exploration, something that should go hand in hand with all open world games. You want to learn more about what's going on, so you should be poking around everywhere you haven't been. But is it really the right type of narrative supplement for a Metal Gear Solid game? Discovering audio logs in the Phantom Pain will be fine, but that's not all I want to be discovering. I don't want to continually roll up at different locations only to find something big has already gone down, and all I'm left with is the aftermath in audiobook form. I want to be at the centre of an event. Hell, I want to be to blame for an event. I want to be an active protagonist. Or antagonist. Well, that's yet to be seen. I'm not saying audio logs have no place in Metal Gear Solid games. I'm saying I don't want them to be as prevalent as they are in Bioshock games. Before concluding, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and I think it's pretty important. The tone of Ground Zeroes, and the tone of the past. Metal Gear is a weird beast of a franchise. If you followed it for as long as I have, odds are you were suckered in by its spy movie presentation. You had this gruff-voiced protagonist that was going to go against the odds and was going to get the job done. But then something weird happened. You went toe-to-toe with a telekinetic wizard, cyborg ninjas, giant robots, and a photosynthesizing sniper. It was nuts. But what was weirder was that it never felt too far-fetched. It wore these oddities as a badge of honor. Now we have MGS5, a completely new beast in and of itself. The setting is heavily inspired by Guantanamo Bay, a real-life place reserved for war criminals and terrorists. There's no cookiness or goofiness here, no humorous conversations you can eavesdrop on. Even the guards seem to be on edge. POWs are everywhere, all wearing sacks on their heads, maybe to deprive them of their senses, maybe to help in waterboarding, who knows. All of their Achilles tendons have been bolted as well, making movement impossible, or at the very least, painful. The tapes you collect only shed light on depressing backstories and other atrocities. It still has that weirdness, the intrigue, the Kojima-isms, if you will, and I had no problem with the subject matter. Torture, murder, rape, none of that triggered me. But it's hard to take all of that dark and gritty story seriously when they exist within the same universe as the rest of the Metal Gear canon. A universe where Snake and Kaz had a date on a sun-baked Costa Rican beach that ended in a cuddle underneath a cardboard box. Kojima has come out and said that comedic elements will still exist in the Phantom Pain, as to not mentally exhaust the players, which is admirable, but it stinks of him having his cake and eating it. If you want to tell a serious gut-wrenching story, tell that story. Comedy is welcome, but you need to make sure it's not at the expense of a poignant moment, or at least minimizing those moments. For example, you can't bookend the death of a major character with poop jokes. Well, you can, if you want, but I'd wager that death would hit a lot harder without the scatological humour. I'm not asking for complete seriousness, and I'm not even implying that Kojima can't do drama. In fact, I think Kojima is right on the money when he says too much drama can lead to player fatigue. But even he must see that the previous 20-odd years of Metal Gear's labyrinthine canon is holding him back from producing a true dark drama, stopping him from straying too far tonally. I remember back when the Phantom Pain was simply that, and not known as MGS5 yet. It really had my attention. A protagonist who was an amputee? It was a cool twist on disempowerment. It looked like a return to good survival horror, a genre that hadn't seen any AAA development love for some time. A few months down the line, it was announced, after loads of speculation, that the Phantom Pain and MGS5 were indeed the same project, and, to tell you the truth, my heart sunk ever so slightly. I mean, I was happy for more Metal Gear, ecstatic even, but why the misery? I couldn't put it into words until now. What I think it was that dark and serious tone I had seen from the Phantom Pain trailer would have had to have played second fiddle to the underlying goofiness of the franchise. Alternatively, Metal Gear would have to sacrifice some of that signature goofiness to now become serious. Either option seemed like a bad one to me. Here's hoping the Phantom Pain juggles these emotions well. Alright, this video is really starting to drag, so let's bring this to a close. Hopes for the future, and a conclusion. Okay, I have some hopes here for the Phantom Pain that I couldn't work into the rest of the video. There wasn't a lot of indoor sections in Ground Zeroes, so I hope that gets rectified in the Phantom Pain. We got a couple of small boiler rooms that had some tight corners, but that was about it really. With features like airstrikes and supply drops, and the Fulton not working indoors, indoor areas are going to paradoxically take players out of their comfort zones and provide an intense stealth experience that could require forethought and tactical planning. It could potentially have the player entering a base completely blind. It would essentially be the stealth mission equivalent of a boss fight, a final exam that puts your skills to the test. I also hope that when you shoot the grenades on enemies' belts, it explodes. Not quite sure what else to say about that, really. I hope an option on the iDroid is added to cancel a helicopter request, or even an option to tell him to take a hike when I'm done with him. I haven't really said anything about the vehicles, but there's not a lot to say, really. They're a must-have for open world games, obviously. Different types of vehicles offer different advantages. Jeeps are fast and can carry passengers. Tanks, and trucks to a lesser extent, can function as disguises. But something needs to be done when you can drive around like this and not raise any eyebrows. Seriously, try it. As long as you don't hit anything, you're golden. While I'm talking about transports, I hope we get different insertion methods besides just the chopper drop-off. Possibly a parachute drop, maybe even something like the drop pod thing from Snake Eater. That'd be pretty cool. Finally, I'm hoping for an open world Metal Gear fight. Something like that, it's a no-brainer really, isn't it? And I'm talking about the mech versus mech and the man versus mech variety, especially the latter. Imagine taking on a Metal Gear in a sandbox the size of Camp Omega. It would be completely different to every other Metal Gear fight that's happened in the series. Instead of a straight-up arena fight, you could set up traps or use vehicles as blockades, or just use the geography to your advantage. Ground Zeroes is a promise of things to come, so you could argue that it's sort of unfinished, but the stealth works really well, which is good seeing as that's the genre. I still remember making the jump from normal difficulty to hard. The guards seem to have the vision range of an actual human being. It was terrifying, you know, it was a far cry from the humble genome soldiers of yesteryear. But it's not just the stealth that works. So many elements and mechanics work well, and even better, they mesh well with each other, and I think that's another aspect of the Phantom Pain Kojima Productions are striving for. Absolute tactical freedom. It's easy for developers to say that's the goal. It's easy for marketers to slap it on the back of a box along with a load of other buzzwords. I imagine, though, it's insanely difficult to put into practice. A lot of games tout absolute freedom nowadays, but what that usually means is absolute freedom as long as the developers thought of it first. We are playing in their world, after all. Of what we've seen of the Phantom Pain, and what has been teased through Ground Zeroes though, there is an insane amount of ways to go about your missions. The missions are so free-form, even the cutscenes change dynamically. It seems hyperbolic to say, but the freedom being offered by the Phantom Pain is the complete opposite of the common definition being offered by the majority of developers. You could say it's jouabilité sans frontières. See what I did there?